Are billboards a towering success or just a high-cost eyesore? Join us as we climb the ladder of advertising insights, exploring if those big, bold billboards truly bring in the buyers, or if they're just another roadside relic. Get ready to find out if investing in these advertising giants are a brilliant strategy or just a tall order. Hey, lady bosses, are you working even after putting the kids to bed but still not getting results?
Are you tired of spending money on ads that aren't getting engagement?
Do you feel burdened that you aren't fulfilling your purpose in life because you are so consumed with work?
I'm your host, Brooke Bolts. I'm an attorney and founder of Bolts Legal. I started my business and in 1 year was bringing in 7 figures and am now bringing in multi-7 figures.
And I'm your co-host, Rachel Bolts, owner of Bolts Media. I've helped many businesses build their online presence and increase their revenue through digital marketing.
Want to hear how we did it?
We are here to help you achieve your goals personally, professionally, and spiritually.
So kick off your high heels, sit back, and let's ignite that passion.
We're Miss Biz, where we're putting the miss in biz.
Let's get One of the most common questions that I get asked in the field of advertising and marketing is, how effective are billboards? I find that many people have dreams or aspirations to someday see their face on a billboard. And I was one of those people as well. And now, having had billboards of my own, I thought we should do this episode to answer the questions that people have about the effectiveness of billboards and what the process is. When I first became interested in doing a billboard, I didn't know the first thing about how to even go about doing that. Who to contact, who was responsible for billboards, how much they cost, all those things. So today we're going to answer some of the most frequently asked questions about billboards.
Well, we're excited to get started and dig a little bit deeper into this. 71% of people consciously look at billboard advertisements. You think about it, how much traffic are on the main interstates, and what types of entertainment do you see on the way to whatever your destination is? And the answer is always billboards. Billboards, they aren't very effective at getting responses like having customers visit your website or call your store, but they are incredibly powerful at building brand awareness because most people see the same billboard multiple times. They remember it and they can often later associate it with a brand or a company. So, Brooke, what are some of the most memorable billboards that you can think of?
For me, a billboard that I saw that I always remember, it said, "Your wife is hot."
That's hilarious. That would crack me up.
And then it was an advertisement for an air conditioning company. So it said, "Your wife is hot," and then it was like, "Call us, we can help," or whatever, for air conditioning company.
Awesome.
So, but as much as I remember the tagline, I couldn't tell you who the actual AC company was. So it was super effective at being memorable, but not so much at building that particular brand. However, it also was not a billboard that I drive by on a regular basis. I think it's in South Florida, actually. So the few times that I've traveled that way, which is several hours from where I live, I've passed it, but I remember it because it's so funny. But I don't know who the brand is, so I don't know if it was effective enough to help me to remember that particular company, even though the tagline is wonderful.
No, that's awesome. But I would think that if you had that specific need, like let's say your AC stopped working or you knew it needed some maintenance, that if you passed by that sign because it caught your attention, you would probably be more likely to pay attention to whatever the phone number was or the website was because you already had that need in your mind.
Sure. If it was a place that I traveled by on a daily basis, then I would look up at it and commit to memory the name of the company so I could look it up later.
Right.
If I wanted to reach out to them. What is a billboard that's memorable for you?
Well, I mean, for years, and it's not up anymore, but for years, there was this ginormous billboard on the side of I-4 that I would drive by every single day, and it just had the big words, vasectomy. And like that would crack me up, and it caught my attention because you don't typically see a billboard that just says vasectomy, call us. So it really, it's the only one that I've ever seen like that in my life. And I guess it stood out to me because it's such a private conversation. Like, you don't normally, like, I don't know if guys do this, but I wouldn't think that you like normally like go out for coffee and be like, yeah, you know, I went and had this done today. Like that's just a very private topic. So to have it just out in the open, I bet his business did incredibly well because of that.
Yeah. And also, I think the key on that one is, like you said, it's not something you ordinarily see on a billboard. If I put auto accidents, call us,
Right.
it's not going to have the same effect because people see that all the time. They've been conditioned to see it. It's just not going to have that memorability factor. But if your business is vasectomies or something that people aren't accustomed to seeing, and you can be very simple with just one word,
Right.
it can be very effective. So we all know that the law firm billboards are the most widely used billboards.
Oh, especially here in Florida, man. Like you can't drive more than 2 centimeters without seeing a new billboard, whether it's on this side of the road or the opposite side of the road facing you. Like they're just everywhere.
And there are a couple of huge firms in the Orlando area where we are that really have done a good job with their billboard advertising, particularly Dan Newland's firm. He was a lawyer who hasn't been around as long as, say, Morgan & Morgan has. He's only been around, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years, not nearly as long, but his billboard campaign is really what grew his firm and what everybody knows him for. It says, Dan got me. It's a check. The billboard is a check, and it has a huge dollar figure on it, the amount of whatever the settlement was. So maybe it's $1 million, and it'll say, Dan got me, and there'll be $1 million check written, and oftentimes he'll have a picture of the person who was the client who received that settlement also on the billboard. Mm-hmm. So when people drive by and they see check after check after check of these huge dollar figures, and it says, Dan got me, these big dollar figures of their settlements, that has just really grown his firm to where it is one of the largest firms in Central Florida, and Morgan & Morgan's home base is here. So I don't know who is bigger in the Central Florida area, but they are both just massive firms. And Dan's entire advertising campaign that, well, I can't say entire, I'm sure he does other advertising, but his most notable or noteworthy that everybody knows him for are his billboard campaigns.
And speaking of John Morgan, he has also done a really good job with his billboard campaign. So over the past few years, his marketing team, I gotta give them an extreme amount of credit. They have photoshopped him on so many different things. I think the last one I saw, John's face was on like the 6-pack of abs, and the guy was like out in the sun. There was another one that like John's face was like superimposed onto an astronaut, and it was talking about being out of this world. Like it's just really, really creative what he does. And not that long ago, he had a whole billboard campaign where it wasn't just one billboard, it was multiple billboards all over that had graffiti on them. And if you looked at it, it really looked like somebody had just vandalized poor John's billboards. But really, the billboards were designed to look like someone had done that. And I just thought that was incredibly genius because it got people talking.
He also has the Billboard campaign that says size matters, which is another one that
Yes.
got people talking. So he's kind of in his billboards, it seems that his goal is to get people talking and to be memorable. So in each of those examples you gave, it was incredibly effective with that being his goal. Dan Newland's goal, I think, is different. It is to show people that he gets them
Right.
money. And that's incredibly effective as well. So whatever your business is, these are just some examples that have stood out to us as utilizing billboard campaigns in an effective way for whatever their objective was. Something that people ask me all the time is, how effective have the billboard campaigns been for me? And I'm a much smaller firm, so I don't have dozens and hundreds of billboards out there. In my early days, one of my first goals upon starting my law firm and starting to bring in enough money to be able to advertise was to have a billboard. So I had a few billboards out on I-4, which is a major highway here in Central Florida. And so those are the first ones. And then I took them down for a number of years because I was trying different things. I wanted to try TV commercials. I wanted to try online things, streaming sites, just all kinds of different types of advertising to then come back to what seemed to be the most effective. And having now done that, I am coming back to, I believe that billboard advertising in my business is probably the best at creating brand awareness. Now, when people ask me, how effective is it for your business? I can only think of maybe one time recently where someone called and said they were calling because of my billboard. And it was because of a billboard that I have here in the town of my office, Oviedo. I have a billboard here now, and it's been up for close to 2 years. And so someone called recently and said they were calling because of that billboard, but it took a while. The billboard has been there for close to 2 years, and so people have to have that need arise in their life.
Correct.
And then remember your billboard. So my point is that when people ask me that question, I say it's very rare that someone calls just because of a billboard. So it doesn't actually, for me, yield immediate phone calls. But what it does is it creates brand awareness in a really strong way, more so than even a lot of the things that I do on social media. And I think that comes down to the credibility factor that comes with billboards. For example, if you see a social media ad of Bolts Legal, you're not necessarily going to think, ooh, that's impressive that they have a social media ad. But if you see a Bolts Legal billboard, it's going to have a different credibility factor. You're going to think, oh, Bolts Legal must be doing pretty well for themselves to now be able to afford to have a billboard. So that's kind of the difference in one aspect of why I think billboards can be effective at creating brand awareness. Again, they don't make the phone ring right away, at least not in my business, but they do create brand awareness in a way that makes it look like you must be doing pretty well for yourself.
Well, I think it boils down to the fact that billboards are very expensive. I mean, they are not easily affordable by the average business. So in order to be able to afford a billboard for an extended period of time, you have to have an ample amount of revenue that you are generating for your business every single month to be able to afford that. So I think that that's what helps establish it in terms of credibility, where you know, okay, well, this business is actually going somewhere because they've had this billboard up for a year now or so. But I do agree with you that in terms of increased visibility, billboards are highly effective, because it's not like with TV commercials where people are fast forwarding through them or turning them on or off, or just not watching TV anymore. You have to drive by billboards. So I think that it does have that advantage. But what are some of the other cons that come into place with billboards?
Well, one of them you just mentioned, which is the cost. And in preparation for this podcast, I reached out to a few of the billboard companies to get some updated pricing to give you an idea of kind of what billboards range are. And just in case you're wondering, in case this is something that's of interest to you, some of the billboard companies that you can contact are Outdoor, Lamar, Clear Channel. Those are some of the ones that I've worked with before. And if you look at the billboard itself and you look just below the artwork, there will be the name of the company who owns that billboard. I never knew that that was even there as a consumer just driving by. But now, if there's ever a billboard that is available, there's nothing on it, and you want to know how to find out how much that billboard costs, just look at what it says. Around here, there's a lot of Lamar or Clear Channel or Out Front, I think it's called. If you contact that company who owns it, they can tell you what that billboard would cost. And also, too, something to be aware of is even if a billboard has an image on it already, don't assume it's not going to be available, because these billboards are rented on contract. So it might be a 6-month contract, it might be a year contract, and they start trying to sell that billboard for the next contract period way before the contract expires. So if there's a billboard you like, you can say, hey, when does this one become available? I would like to reserve this one for when it is available. And they'll say to you, it becomes available whenever. And then you can get ready and get that billboard when it opens up. So don't just assume it's not available because it's got an image on it. It might be coming available in the near future. And so the range of prices, and it's such a wide range. If you're in town in a very small city with a small, low to the ground billboard, it might be, I've never seen one as low as $500 here in our area, but it's possible in some small rural areas you can find one as low as $500 a month. Around here, though, if you want to be on a major highway, it's going to be usually $3,500, $5,000 a month for just a modest billboard.
Just one.
Just one, yeah,
Just
for
one.
one. Yeah, I had, at the time I had a few on I-4, I think mine were in the $5,000 a month range per billboard. I might have had one that was like $3,500, but it was not great visibility. There were trees until you got close to it, and then you only got to actually see it for maybe a couple of seconds before you drove by it. So things like that determine the price of it. If it's blocked to a large extent by trees until you get right up on it, that's going to be cheaper than something that is going to be able to be seen from miles away.
If you enjoy the Miss Biz podcast but still have questions or need advice, we have some exciting news for you. Join us for Miss Biz Connects. Miss Biz Connects is a weekly 1-hour Zoom call on Fridays at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
This is 1 hour each week dedicated to you. We want to meet you and put our brains together to help you grow personally, professionally, and spiritually.
To access the meeting link, visit us on our social media pages at Miss Biz Podcast, or send us an email to missbizpod@gmail.com.
Join us this Friday and let's grow the Miss Biz Nation.
What if it's on the opposite side of the road, are those typically cheaper than the ones that are facing in the same direction as you're going?
Yeah, sometimes the ones on the opposite side of the road face the other direction, but if it faces your direction, I haven't looked at that specific scenario to determine if it's cheaper. I think it just depends on the visibility, because sometimes if it's on the opposite side of the road, you might have clear visibility of it for a long way. And so you could make an argument it should be cheaper, but it may not be, because it might have visibility from a farther distance away as you're approaching it, because it comes down to how long are you seeing this thing? Are you seeing it for a split second, or are you able to see it for 30 seconds or more as you approach it? Also, of course, the road that it's on and the traffic that's on that road is another factor. When you get these proposals for billboards, they list out where they are. Oftentimes they'll show you pictures of the billboards, which is great, so you don't have to drive around town and look at them all. And then it'll show you what the average traffic numbers are on that roadway. So it'll say 20,000 cars per day or per hour or whatever it may be. It'll say all of that for you on the proposal, so you'll have an idea of how many eyeballs are going to be seeing your billboard each day.
Does it tell you how many accidents are on that road? Because I feel like that information would be really good for a personal injury attorney.
It does not, but that would be great. There is data out there. When I had a TV commercial, Spectrum gave me that data. They would tell me, here's how many accidents occur in this county versus this county versus this county, and they would have statistics on where the most accidents were occurring. So that data is available out there. Somehow Spectrum has it, but I don't recall seeing that on the Billboard proposals.
All right, Clearwater, you gotta cut OG Barbie a little bit of percentage on that. Because I feel like, was it Clear Channel?
Yeah.
Oh, Clear Channel. Because I feel like, especially when it comes to having a legal need, you have to wait for an accident to happen. So the chances of somebody driving by right in that moment and having an accident are kind of slim. So I feel like that would be really good information for you to know, because most of the time you have to have a need in order to do business with someone. I know anytime that I've done business with something that I saw on a billboard, I already knew I wanted to go have this service done. So just seeing that billboard brought it to my attention. But in the legal field, I feel like having that prime spot, man, is going to be key to really helping you and helping to be effective.
Right. So another pro, and we're talking pros and cons here, of billboard advertisement is the high visibility. So one of the statistics shows that outdoor advertising has the lowest cost per thousand, which is CPM, of almost any other type of advertisement. They range from $2 to $7. And that efficiency also means they deliver high return on the relatively low investment. So although billboards are expensive, when you compare that with how many views that you're receiving, it turns out to be one of the lower expensive, I'm not saying that right.
More affordable?
Yeah, you get a lot of views for that amount of money. So if you were to take that same $5,000, for example, and put it on a social media ad, maybe you would get 100,000 views, but a billboard may get 500,000 views because of how many cars are passing by that road every single day. So
now, we are not saying anything against online advertisements, because there are all kinds of tricks you can do, like tagging and people following, that tag following you even after you go, or if you're looking at a competitor, your ad will show up. I just want to make it clear as the media person that ads are still good.
No, of course, billboards are one aspect of a marketing campaign, and they're only available to certain types of businesses that would benefit from them. So we're not taking away from any of the other types of marketing. There's digital marketing and there's traditional marketing. And so I was just using that as a comparison of the amount of views you get for the amount of money you spend. So the benefit of social media marketing is you can take $15 and turn it into an ad and get views on it. That's not available for a billboard. Right. So you want to have a well-rounded marketing approach, and outdoor advertisements, traditional advertisements like billboards, may be a good thing to consider, or they may not be. Just kind of depends on the details of your particular business. So another pro is they say it has a high return on investments. Billboards have, they claim, and I don't know, this seems high to me, but the statistics say that there's 497% return on investment, and that's according to the Out-of-Home Advertising Association of America, which of course probably wanted that. They probably had a bias in coming up with that statistic. 497% seems very high on a return on investment if you're defining it as actual business dollars recovered. But I guess it could be possible if you have enough billboards and they're done effectively and they're done for a long enough period of time that they make your business become essentially a household name. It's a long game.
Yeah, I think it really depends on your industry as well, and how desired your services are too. Or if you're the only one in the area that does something like that and they see your billboard, like with the vasectomy guy, you know, I feel like that was truly effective because he didn't have a whole lot of competitors taking up that space. And many times people were already thinking like, yeah, I need one of these. And then they see the sign. For years this billboard was up. So I think it really depends on your industry, and two, how effective your design is. You know, does it stand out? Is there anything that's drawing attention, or is it just blending in with everything else?
Right. The other advantage of billboards is it's a way to get out a message quickly to a large audience. So these are why sometimes if you're running a political campaign or something and you've only got a few months to get your name out there, something like a billboard advertisement would be very effective at that. But also if you're working on a budget, there might be other ways to get the message out there more cost effectively. But if you have a campaign that you want to get out there quickly because there's some kind of deadline or time crunch, a billboard campaign would be a great way to get that message out there.
I agree with that, because I've seen instances where people who are missing, their faces were put on the billboard as well as like the reward value. And I don't know how often that happens or how recent it was, but I know I have heard of that helping to get some tips coming in so that the officers and the detectives could work on some leads.
Yeah, it can be quick, and you'd be surprised how quickly they can get a new billboard up. That artwork, you would think, takes a long time to prepare and print and get posted up on the billboard, but they can actually do it pretty quickly.
Wow, that's good to know.
Sure. So now we're going to turn to some of the cons of billboard advertising. And one of the really big ones is the limited messaging capability. You really only can put a few words on a billboard. So to try to find a mix of words and images to put on the billboard effectively is really hard. It's just really hard to come up with something in such a small, even though it's a big billboard, because it's so far away, you can only really put a small amount of information on it for people to be able to read it. So, and then this is where social media campaigns are much more effective, because you can have a video, you can have a whole post of a full paragraph. You can just relay all kinds of information in a social media post or a video or a TV commercial. You can't do that in a billboard. You're just very limited on what messaging you can get across.
Yeah, I can see that being an issue, definitely. And I mean, how many times have you drove by a billboard and even like forgot what their website was? Maybe you wanted to go see it, but you forgot what their website was. So really, what kind of information do you think is the best type of information to have on a billboard?
I think the vasectomy one is a really good example. I mean, if we look at your business, for example, if you wrote social media ads or website design or, just one of the niche things, services that you offer, and you put that on a billboard. I mean, Geico did this. They would write motorcycles.
Right.
They'd write like we motorcycles too, or boats. They just write one word, boats, motorcycles, because everyone kind of knows that Geico insures cars, but they may not know that they do motorcycles and boats. So they would have an advertisement that would just have a picture of the gecko and write boats. And that's people funny. would know, okay, they do boats too.
Yeah.
So I thought that was effective to relay the message. I obviously remember it. You knew who it was because the Geico was recognizable. Now, you might not have a brand as recognizable as the Geico Gecko. So for me, I'm not as well known as the Gecko, so I'd have to have space to write Bolts Legal on there. So if I got to write Bolts Legal, that's going to take up a bunch of space.
Right.
So I got to be really selective on whatever the other words that I put on there. So just something short and descriptive of what you do, coupled with something that is memorable, I think is the win-win if you can come up with the right idea.
Hebrews 11:1. Faith shows the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things we cannot see. I agree.
So one of the other cons is the short exposure time. You're only seeing the billboard for a matter of seconds as you drive by.
Sometimes milliseconds, depending on how fast they're going.
Right. It's very quick how quickly you're seeing these things. And for that reason, it's hard to get people to act based on a billboard. They're also driving or riding, and so the chances of them pulling out their phone and looking up your website at that moment is low. So it's not the best way to get people to act. They can't click on an ad like you could on a social media ad, for example. They'd have to take action to look you up later. And it's such a short exposure time that it may not even be enough time to get out your phone and say, scan a QR code,
right,
or something like that. So I remember when I first got my billboard, I took my kids out because I wanted to show it to them, but I didn't tell them what we were doing. I'm just like, just look out the window and drive by. And so I was trying to video their reaction and the billboard as well. And it was like 3 seconds and it's over. So it's hard. Like that's the exposure time is, okay, here it's coming. And then it's gone. Mm-hmm. So if you've ever tried to take a picture, take a video of a billboard, you know that it's
hard.
Quick.
You have to, I've actually done that, and I forgot to take a picture in time. Like I couldn't get my face to unlock the screen so I could take the picture in time. So then I had to wait till I went by a second time to try to remember the name of the company and how I could get a hold of them. So you're absolutely right about that. I have a question though. How weird was it seeing your face on a billboard? Like, was that like surreal for you?
Yeah. Trying to remember how it felt. I think it was, kind of crazy to see that for the first time. Also, though, I think it was a good feeling overall. It was a rewarding feeling that almost kind of like I've accomplished something.
Yeah, absolutely. Because not too many people can say that they have a billboard with their face on it. A lot of times, even like these business owners that maybe own a franchise, right? It's not their face that gets put on the billboard. It's the company and the franchise and
Right.
the location there. So there is a sense of accomplishment there.
And especially as an attorney, because law firms advertise so much on billboards, it's kind of almost like a rite of passage to have had your face on a billboard. Now, at the same time, there are law firms who pride themselves on having never had a billboard. We're not one of those billboard lawyers. And so that becomes part of their marketing campaign is we don't do billboards. So I don't know, whatever your feelings are about billboards is fine. I just know I tried a bunch of things, and now having tried those things, I still think the most feedback I got was from the billboard campaigns that I did.
I definitely know it helps with increased visibility, because I remember being out to lunch with you and a roofer, and the waitress came up and was like, "Oh yeah, it's Brooke Bolts. I've seen your face." So people know who you are that probably would have never, had the opportunity to know your name, who you are, what you do, had you not had that billboard there.
Yeah, I know, and this is how I gauge advertisements, and I'm sure it's not the right KPI, but but I gauge them by how many people come up and say, I saw your ad. So when I think about how many people came up to me and said, oh, I saw your TV advertisement or your TV commercial, compared to how many people who came up and said, I saw your billboard, it's just apples to oranges. So many more people came up to me to tell me they've seen my billboard versus my TV commercials or my social media ads or whatever it may be. It's just the billboard, for whatever reason, people either are seeing more or they're remembering more, but they're telling me more often that they've seen it. And that was painful because it's one of the more expensive things to do, especially if you're going to do more than one. But I think I'm going to be doing another billboard campaign here soon because I do think it's one of the more effective things.
Well, here's the thing, like everybody rides in the car. Even if you don't drive, you're still riding in the car. And a lot of times you're traveling across the same route multiple times because you have a destination that you go to that's in that route. Not everybody watches the same TV channel. Right? And whether you decide to do commercial advertisements with streaming or with just regular cable TV, like everybody watches different channels. If they even have cable anymore, because a lot of them don't have cable because they're so ridiculously expensive and they're always raising your bill. So I think that is it right there. You're able to get more quantity because everybody rides around in a vehicle. Even if you don't have a car, you're riding in a bus of some sort to get to wherever you need to go.
Yes, and that reminds me of another point, which is visual pollution. Some people, one of the cons is people are seeing so many billboards and other outdoor advertisements that they just become annoyed by them or don't even pay attention to them because it's just, their just focus isn't on it. But when I compare that with the TV commercial, for example, I think that the nuisance of the visual pollution is less than the nuisance of a TV commercial, which is interrupting a show you're watching. So to me, if I'm driving down the road and I see a billboard, I'm much less annoyed by that than I am sitting and waiting for my favorite TV show to come back on, or the game I'm watching to come back on, or the news to come back on, whatever it may be. People just view commercials as a nuisance because they're interrupting whatever it is you want to be watching. And so people either walk away from it or they fast forward it, or if they're forced to sit there and watch it, I remember your grandma would mute them.
Yes. Oh man, all the time.
Yes, so she didn't have the capabilities to fast forward things, but she would mute it every single time. And she'd just sit there in silence until the show came back on, and then she'd unmute it. So
That's that old school right there.
yes, so that's the perception of the commercials is, let's hurry up and get through this so I can get back to what I really want to be watching. And I don't think that you have that same thing with the billboards. People may feel like there's too many of them, they're all over the place, but you're going to be driving that way one way or the other. It's not keeping you from getting to where you need to go or inhibiting you in any way.
Right. I mean, you're not driving to be entertained. When you're watching TV, you're watching TV because you want to be entertained by something. Whereas, like, when you're driving, you're not driving to be entertained by anything specific. Like, there's no entertainment unless you turn on the radio or you look outside, because your main focus is getting to where you need to go.
Right.
You know we're all about that case, no trouble. All about that case, no trouble. All about that case, no trouble. All about that case.
At Volts Legal, we are all about your case. Text or call to schedule a free consultation for all your legal needs. VoltsLegal.com. So one of the main things that Billboard detractors will cite is the fact that potential customers can't take the billboard with them, meaning they likely can't stop to take a picture of one of them if they're in the car. So the concern becomes whether or not they're likely to remember the ad by the time they get home. And while I agree with this, it's not something that people can usually take action on at that time, and they probably will forget about it by the time they get home if they only see the billboard one time. That said, people oftentimes take the same route on a regular basis, sometimes every day. And so if a billboard happens to be in a location where people are driving all the time, then that repetition will further ingrain that memory of that brand in their mind. So, and that also lends itself to what you said earlier, which is that you need to be catchy or memorable. Some of the things I read is that our eyes catch red, orange, and yellow the fastest. So if you're making a billboard and you can only have one of them, using one of those colors is going to catch attention.
Yeah, and to measure effectiveness of the hashtag or the QR code that is unique to the campaign, that way when people use it, you can track it. So that is such a good point, because a lot of times people, even if they saw your billboard or they saw your commercial or heard your advertisement somewhere, they're not going to say, hey, I'm calling you because of this billboard or this email marketing campaign that I received. But if you give them a special code or hashtag or keyword to use for that campaign, and you offer them some type of incentive, like, I don't know, 10% off or something like that. I know with you can't really do that, but figure out some type of way, then you can keep track more effectively than just relying on the honor system for them to tell you.
Right. So if you're on your billboard, you can put a QR code or maybe a unique landing page that isn't your main one, but is a different one that may lead to your main website, so that you can track how effective the billboard is. Because otherwise, and this is what all the marketing companies do, they say, oh, you've had an increase on your website traffic this month. That's obviously because of our commercial, or that's obviously because of our billboard. And you can't ever know for sure if that's where the increased traffic is coming from. But if you use a specific QR code or you use a separate landing page that isn't used for anything else, then you could reliably track how many new views you're getting from that particular ad. So that's a summation of my experience with billboards. And again, I think that they are very effective at creating brand awareness, but they do have a lot of cons that we've talked about as well. So you just have to weigh those things and decide if it's something that may be beneficial for your business.
We appreciate you and are honored to be on this journey with you. We can't wait to help you, to encourage you, and show you how to grow personally, professionally, and spiritually.
If you found Miss Biz helpful, please leave a review and share with others.
You can follow us on social media at Miss Biz Podcast.
For legal questions or services, please visit boltslegal.com.
And for digital marketing needs, please visit boltsmedia.com. Let's get biz done.